Hello, and welcome to another edition of From the Source. I'm your host, Elizabeth Johnson. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with the newly elected Assemblywoman, Gina Silitti. Gina, welcome to the show. I'm
Oh my
so
gosh.
happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So much fun.
So tell me, you are in two places at once, I think, is kind of the way it works. That you are in Albany for at least 4 days a week.
Yeah. So right now we're in what they call budget season. I'm learning the lingo, Liz. So we're in budget season, the month of March. So it's 4 days a week. I come up on Sunday night, and I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I drive back Thursday. So I come back Thursday night. And then I'm in the district office on Friday, and then obviously any district events happening over the weekend. It's hard. It's hard. Some days are harder than others, right? So like this Sunday, not for nothing, I got a little teary. Me and my husband were very close, so I got a little sad. I was, because it's, 4 days away from home, and of course, I was making sure he had everything, loved my husband to death, but, he married an Italian woman. So I do, not to be stereotypical, but I do a lot of cooking and he does zero cooking. And so I was like, making sure he had food for the week and all kinds of stuff. So it's just, so the 2 days I'm here, it's a lot. Right. So tonight I'm going to go grocery shopping. I'm going to cook during, on the weekend and just try to make sure everything's all set. And someone asked me, why do I travel to Albany? Everything is still virtual, right? We're doing our assembly meetings virtually. It's a hybrid, like it's in person and virtually, but I'm brand new. So it's already a learning curve as it is. Yes, I've worked in government. So I can't even imagine some of my new colleagues who have had zero experience in government. A lot of them, have all different kinds of backgrounds. Of course, we have the lawyers, but there's, social workers. There's, obviously some activists, people who work in labor. It's across the board. And I've worked in government, so I kind of have an idea of sort of, the players and how, how things run, but it's still such a learning curve. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to Albany I want to meet staff because staff is there, right? Staff, so they get to know me and I can ask questions because, again, not sure if you've known, I can talk. So I want people to get to know me and, and get to know them and just kind of figure things out and, how the wheels turn there.
Exactly.
But it's very interesting. If anybody has been to Albany before, or if you have any advocates listening and people who have traveled there, you've seen how it is in Albany, on lobby day. It's crazy. There's hundreds of people and they're everywhere and they're going in and out of offices and they're here and they're there and they're, protesting this and protesting that. And it's empty. It's silent. It's empty. It's been invaluable to be there. I'm learning so much. But also I get to, talk to people in person about things that are important for the district, right? I'm able to have those personal conversations and there's other, legislators that aren't there. So I get to use up their time.
I also saw you posted yesterday that you were in charge.
So yesterday was so much fun. So I've been, like I said, I've been going to Albany,
right.
And but I at the beginning I didn't go into chambers because they have a 30-person rule and there's so much staff and people who have to be there. So it's like I'm not going to go. I don't want to But then I was like, I'm driving all the way up here. I should go into chambers. And the chambers are, it's beautiful. Like you walk in and it like takes your breath away. Also, the awesomeness of your responsibility, but it's just beautiful also, right? So I was like, all right, I'm going to start going. And if they say I can't be there, then, I can't be there. So I kind of walked in all like, can I be here? And they were like, sure, sit down. And I don't have my own seat yet. I mean, my name is there, but they haven't made all the, rearrangements. So I'm in Tony's old seat. And it's so funny. It's like the Italian flag on the desk. And I was like, well, that works for me. And it's so funny. So yeah, so I've been sitting there the past few weeks and, and I'll bring paperwork with me because a lot of times there's a lot of back and forth and there's a lot of talking. And so there's some downtime, so I have like a little laptop that they give us and, so I'm doing work and emails and, while listening at the same time, which is nice. So you kind of get all things going at the same time. So there's the Speaker of the Assembly and his name is Carl Hastie. And you probably heard that name. Right. He is the elected Speaker of the Assembly, but like Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. But she doesn't run the day-to-day operations of the chamber, right? And neither does Mr. Hastie. There is in the New York State Assembly, same with Andrea Stewart Cousins. She is the Speaker pro temp or the majority leader on the Senate side. She doesn't run the day-to-day operations of, the calling, Mr. Goodell, Mr. this person, do you yield? Do you, 5 minutes and this, all the different stuff that happens, the parliamentary procedures, right? So, so we have this guy, his name is Jeff Arbery, and he is this, tall, older gentleman with this booming voice. And I actually asked him, I'm like, did they give you this? He's had this job for like 20 years, right? Through multiple speakers. I was like, did they give you this job because of your voice? Think like James Earl Jones, right? Fabulous voice.
Right.
I was like, did they give you this job because of your voice? And he's like, Gina, I've had this job for so long. I don't know if they gave it because of my voice or if, my voice came from the job. So anyways, so he does all the things, but when you're in there for a few hours, every once in a while, you got to take a break, right? So so when he takes a break, he'll grab somebody who's, sitting there. And, this Thursday, I walked in and I'm, maybe because I'm new, I'm very earnest. I'm showing up on time and I'm sitting in my seat. Well, nobody starts on time in Albany. Like literally nothing starts on time. So I'm sitting there. I'm literally the only Democrat on the assembly floor. There's staff, there's a few Republicans, and there's me. So I'm like, am I getting punked? Like, where is everybody? It's literally all by myself. So it was a very light day as far as, people coming in, maybe because it was, people were returning home or whatever the case may be. So fast forward, not a lot of Dems there. And he had to take a break. So he waves to me and I'm like, looking around, of course, there's nobody there. I was like, oh, me. So I went up there and there's a person, staff member that sits like literally right next to you, like a little lower down. So you're high, you're like up on this platform and this chair and there's the gavel and the whole thing. And then there's the staff person. And I was like, you're going to tell me exactly what to say, right? And there's a whole script. But, he has the list of who's, going to be called next. And there was a debate. So somebody stands up and I acknowledge that person. And I was like, Mr. Engelbright, we've asked for an explanation. Will you please explain? Then somebody wanted to ask him questions. So then you have to ask the sponsor, will you yield? And he says, yes, I will yield. And then I have to say, Mr. So-and-so yields, and it's like very formal and like back and forth. But because I had gone to chambers every day to sit there, and listen and, do my work and just kind of be present, right? I knew exactly like the back and forth, and kind of how everything worked. And I felt very comfortable. And like when Mr. Aubrey came back, he was like, okay. I'm like, I'm good. And he laughed and he was like, no. Like, okay, bye. So that was a fun thing. What the other part that was funny was our majority leader who is on the floor. So there's a speaker who's sort of like running the parliamentary, and then there's the majority leader who is Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who kind of like talks about the bills, and she's the speaker on the floor. She also was taking a break at the time I was up there. So Michael Szilagyi was in her place. So we were joking like Nassau took over the New York Assembly for like 10 minutes. And it was funny. I was up there. I'm like, how do you make a joke on the record? I try to keep things light, like in general. But I was like, can I make a joke? I don't know. Do they make jokes? Like Aubrey makes jokes, but I figure he can make jokes because he's been there for 20 years. Wow. I've been there for like 5 seconds. Right. So I was going to make a, Nassau has taken over joke, but then I was like, I don't know. Not everybody knows me yet. Maybe I should make jokes. So that was yesterday. So, everything is, oh, by the way, when I was, by myself in the assembly waiting for everything to get started, I still don't know my way around, right? So I'm still, I was like, all right, let me take a few minutes to kind of explore, look around, and everything's so beautiful, right? It's so ornate, and, it's not just a light, it's a big brass light with things, and, the carvings, and, everything's just so spectacular. And I like the exploring. I like, if I have, a break in between, I'll just go looking around, because
can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
You feel safe there is my question.
100%. 100% feel safe.
Why?
First of all, it's closed to the public. Closed to the public, but we have wonderful state troopers who are on site. They walk around, they have their rounds. And I tell you, on January 20th, I did not go to Albany. I didn't go to Albany that week. Because, they talked about, trouble at all the state capitals. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to be there. I can do it virtually. And it wasn't so much for my safety. It was, the Capitol Police are doing, or excuse me, the state troopers are doing their best to protect us. I don't need to add to, what they're trying to do, because there's people that legitimately by law have to be there, right? And I can be there virtually. So decided to stay home, keep a little, just keep it on the down low. Obviously everything turned out, but the presence there leading up to January 20th and subsequently has been a lot more intense than it was. You see more, people in full gear than you did before. So, a little unsettling, when you first see it, as, you would be when you see somebody with a, machine gun. But I feel, but I feel very safe there. I have not, but again, once the public comes in, but there's metal detectors and there's all kinds of stuff.
Right.
There's, and unfortunately, everything's barricaded on the outside. That's unfortunately the new normal now. So you pass the Capitol building, which normally would be all open and people, you have to come in, you have to go through the metal detectors, of course, like normal. But it's not anymore. There's, these concrete barriers and big, tall fences, and, the streets are closed. So it's sad. and I'm sure, and you've seen it's just like at the Capitol. I mean, the Capitol is way more intense, as far as fencing and everything else. But we still have the same presence. We have the fencing, and it's the new normal, and we'll see what happens when the Capitol is open again to the public. I'm sure it's going to be a much reduced capacity, but that's part of it. That's part of the job. The job is interacting with the public, so we have to get back to that at some point. So we just got to figure out a way to do it safely, from a COVID standpoint, obviously, and from a general public safety standpoint. But I mean, like when I talked about going around exploring, I do feel comfortable. Funny story, speaking of exploring, accidentally, I was on a phone call and I stepped away, and I was trying to find a quiet spot, and everything's huge and marble, and it like echoes. So I'm trying to figure out where to go, and I see a door, and I was like, "Ooh, let me go out this door." And then they're like, "Oh, Gina, I'm having a hard time hearing you." I'm like, "Oh, shoot, this must be like a dead zone. Let me go pop back in." Well, the door was locked, so I locked myself out of the chambers. So I had to go, like I'm on the phone call with this person, and I'm running with the person on the phone around to try to get back. You can't make it up. Can't make it up. So I figure things out that way when I lock myself out of the chambers. But I feel like that's like, part of the freshman experience is, getting yourself locked out of places and not know where you're going. But it's pretty incredible, walking into that room for the first time, and you've seen pictures on social media that I've shared. It's beautiful. And it's when I first walked in, I was like, I looked around, I'm like, I'm going to be working here. And in a middle of a global pandemic, like,
do you think that that's helping you actually, because it's kind of easing you into a situation? I mean, you're first of all, you're a gung ho kind of person. You don't. I don't think you let any dust settle. You just go. But the fact is that there is so much to learn. There's so much to get up to speed. And one of the things that I think this pandemic has allowed us to do is breathe. I mean, the good news is that we have someone who does know the constituency and everything like that. And I do believe that in a few months' time, you're not going to have the luxury of, this time to breathe. Then you're going to have to run and do like you've been doing.
No, it's been, it's the Zoom, honestly, obviously I want to see people in person. I want to talk to people. I want to see people. But the Zoom has been helpful, right? So like last night I was able to, be honest, at a meeting last night at 7:30 with, some Port Washington people, environmental group. But at the same time, I was, I prepared, started preparing dinner, right? So I got everything prepped for my husband to just kind of, do, and then did my meeting. And so then when the meeting was over, I was able to sit down and have it was 9 o'clock at night. No, it was about 9 o'clock at night when we finally sat down to dinner. But, I'm able to do that. I was able to do that on the campaign, and I'm able to do it now. But, the learning curve has been steep. It's hard enough, but not being with other elected officials, people who've had the experience. I give you an example, right? So we're talking, we're having meetings, conferences on the budget. And we're talking about this, we're talking about that. And everybody talks in acronyms. And because they've been doing it for so long. So it'd be like, blah, 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 ABC, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, I literally don't know what they're talking about. So, and I'm trying to keep up in general. But then they start talking in a language that I don't understand. So one, I was like, somebody needs to write an Albany to English dictionary, like first, just like like literally give it to us on the first day. Here are the names and this is the acronyms and this is like the code that we talk in. But like if I was sitting next to, my colleague, if we were in chambers or if we were in conference, and normally they would do it in like a huge room where everybody would sit in rather than Zoom, I could lean over and be like, what are you talking about? But you can't. So like, you Google or you like flip into the back of the book and like trying to find like where it says what the thing is. And it's much better than it was. Like those first meetings, I don't know what you're talking about. But everybody's been so nice. So like if we're having, a conversation, say about, education dollars or whatever, the education committee chair, a guy named Mike Benedetto, is so nice. And so I've called him, I've called them all. I mean, like I said, I'll talk to anybody. But, be like, listen, I didn't really catch everything you said about this. And they'll explain it to you because you know what? They've been there too. They've been there too. They've been a newbie. Maybe it was, 20 years ago. Maybe it was 10 years ago. Maybe it was 40 years ago. We have, a member who's been here a very, very long time. But they also were new at some point and they get it and they get how hard it is. And they understand how hard it is for us being so virtual and not having those, really important interpersonal relationships, which is another reason why I like to go to Albany, because every once in a while people will come in person and then you get to see them and it's, it's like, ooh, you got legs.
Right.
You have a torso. So it's fun and nice to see people that you've only seen, their head for 3 months.
Right.
And, so it's like meeting an old friend, quite honestly. So that's how we're governing right now. It's crazy, right? When you think about it, like, did you ever think you would be governing like through a computer? And that's how we're doing it. You have your staff on the ground, but we're governing through Zoom. What a difference a year makes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I understand that you've also co-sponsored a bill recently. Related to the Franchetti child.
Yeah. So Andrew Hevesy is one of my new colleagues, and he chairs the committee that this would fall under, and he is an advocate. He is an advocate for children and passionate. Like he spoke on the floor this week, Monday, about the budget and about increasing dollars to help children because they're home, right? They're home. We don't know what's happening at home. We know that, God forbid bad things are happening at home. So anyways, he's a passionate advocate. And he sponsored, there's several laws that would help but let's take a step back. Let's talk about Kira. She was killed by her father. In the most horrible way you can imagine. She was only 28 months old. She was a baby, right? For all intents and purposes.
Absolutely.
She was a baby. She was just over 2 years old. She was so cute. And as, any 2-year-old would be, right? And father shot her, killed her, and then set the house on fire and killed himself in the process. For years, there were custody hearings, and there were problems. And the mother was, saying that she was worried about his anger and his rage issues,
right.
And history of stalking and then, in 2016, he had an unsupervised, court-sanctioned visit where he killed Kira. And So what this bill does is, I do have some notes if you don't mind, because I want to make sure I get it right. There's multiple sections of this bill. So it's just recently been introduced. And by the way, this is just taking a step back really quick. I had not heard of this bill if it were not for my constituents. So this is one of those moments where this is what government's all about. I got all of a sudden out of nowhere, I started getting emails and saying, please support Kira's Law. I'm like, what's Kira's Law? And then more emails and more emails. And then I got tagged on social media and phone calls. I mean, and it wasn't like this was not in a negative way. This was in the way it's supposed to work, right? Kind of way. And then people were like, telling me about, and then I spoke to Kira's mother, and I finally got some more information, because honestly, there was no bill actually at that point when I started getting advocated for, because I was trying to research it. I was like, it doesn't exist. And then I finally spoke to Assemblyman Hebesy, and it was still in bill drafting actually, so it didn't have a bill number, and that's why I couldn't find it. But I said, listen, the mother, they lived in Port Washington, right? This is my district. The community is very much behind this, what you're doing, and they want me to be. So I would like to be. Once this bill comes up, I would like to read it. Once it's done, and co-sponsor it, if appropriate. And so I did, at the urging, honestly, of my constituents, and because it's the right thing to do. So one of the things that this bill does, which would have been helpful in Kira's case, is that the second somebody, and I hope I'm getting this right, so if anybody's listening, if I say anything wrong, please let me know. The second that an allegation is made by either side, right? Because family court is the toughest court. There's emotions are running so high, and there's accusations left and right. And the judges and the advocates have a very hard time. They have to weed through, right? And unfortunately, in this case, it was the wrong, I guess obviously wrong decisions were made. There has to be, before considering anything, so basically everything stops, and they have to conduct an evidentiary hearing, and do like interviews to make sure the allegations are true. And should the court find a pattern of domestic violence or child abuse, the court will award sole custody to the non-defending parent, because, and the whole thing of this law is, they use the language on multiple occasions throughout the bill, is the health and safety of the child takes priority, period, right? So it literally, that phrase is in there multiple times. And then training. This is the other part of it. And this was, Kira's mom advocated for this heavily, is that it requires specific training for judges and court personnel handling child custody cases in which child abuse or domestic violence is alleged. And again, the priority is the health and safety of the children. And some examples of training are tactics commonly used by one party to induce fear in another party or child. So, recognizing those tactics, right? So, it may not just be physical abuse, the kind that you can see, right, on your arms or your face or whatever. It's fear. It's mental abuse, right? The increased risk of escalating violence that occurs during child custody proceedings, because so few child custody cases go to trial, where all this comes out. Less than 4% of child custody cases require trial. So it's critical for the judges and the court personnel who hear these child custody case and visitation cases, that they receive, comprehensive, intense training. So anyway, so that's sort of like, some kind of the basics of it. But this is one of those, I love, this is a great example, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because this is one of those things where I was, advocated by my community, not by lobbyists, not by organizations, literally a grassroots effort by people who live here. And they were, all over the district, but it was all people in the district, calling my office and saying, listen, this is important to us. Please support it. And I love that. Like, that's a great, that's a part of the job that I think is important.
And it's obviously you stepped up and did it.
Yeah. So we'll see, what happens. Obviously this bill, has not come up yet, for, a floor vote, but it does have a number now. It's a real bill. Right now we're, in, the budget, crunch of things. So, there's not going to be much outside of the budget going on for the next 2 weeks. Our budget has to be put in by April 1st. Unfortunately, we got, a couple of weeks before we can kind of get back to some kind of normal. And because it's busy now. It is late nights, every night, 8, 9 o'clock, getting out of here. But this is what I signed up for, right? I'm ready to go.
Well, I thank you very much for taking time out.
Oh, no, we done?
It's like, I'm telling you, you blink and it's an hour, and I just like incredible. So I hope that you will come back on your show. Yeah. And I thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Liz. It was so much fun.